One night in June 1962, 4 men made their break for freedom from possibly the most famous prison in America. 3 of the prisoners successfully escaped from the fort, yet whether they survived the journey to shore is widely discussed. The FBI concluded that they drowned, yet their bodies were never recovered from the depths of San Francisco Bay. A case that never fails to intrigue and leaves the same question on everybody's lips. Did the trio successfully escape from Alcatraz Island? Tonight on Dark Curiosities, the fate of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. La Isla de los Alcatraces, translated as the Isle of the Gannets, more widely known today as Alcatraz Island, is located 1¼ miles from the shore of San Francisco Bay. The rock has a rich history and became a federal prison in 1934, designed for prisoners who caused problems at other federal prisons. However, some of the first to arrive at Alcatraz were robbers and murderers. Throughout its time as a federal prison, Alcatraz held many notorious criminals, including Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, Bumpy Johnson, Alvin Karpis, and Robert Stroud, known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. 36 prisoners made 14 escape attempts, some more than once, over the course of 29 years. During December in 1961, 4 inmates at Alcatraz Federal Prison were allocated adjacent cells. The 4 men, Frank Morris, Alan West, and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, concocted a plot to flee from their incarceration. Frank Lee Morris was born on the 1st of September 1926 in Washington, D.C., and according to the FBI was orphaned at the age of 11 and spent a few years in different foster homes. Throughout his life, he had been imprisoned numerous times. His first conviction came when he was just 13 years old. The crimes he was found guilty of ranged from theft, breaking and entering, possession of narcotics, and even escape attempts from other prisons. He carried out his sentences in Florida, Georgia, and Louisiana. He was serving a 10-year sentence in Louisiana State Penitentiary for bank robbery when he successfully escaped. Authorities managed to recapture him a year later whilst he was participating in another robbery. Despite being traced, Frank reportedly had an IQ of 133, which was within the top 2% of the population. Following his arrest in 1960, he was sent to Alcatraz. Frank Morris was inmate AZ1441. John William Anglin was born on the 2nd of May 1930. His brother Clarence, born just over a year later, on the 11th of May 1931. Both were born in Donaldsonville, Georgia, to George Anglin and Rachel Van Miller Anglin, who were seasonal farm labourers. Together they shared 13 children: Alfred, George, Carson, Rufus, Audrey, Christine, Marie, Patsy, Merle, Mary Nell, Verna, and of course, Clarence and John. In the early 1940s, the Anglin family relocated to Ruskin, Florida, which lies 20 miles south of Tampa. The family found better income from working on truck farms and picking from the tomato fields and cherry trees further north in Michigan. According to several sources, John and Clarence had a very close relationship, being described as inseparable. The pair were noted by their siblings as being exceptionally skilled swimmers, having swam through the icy depths of Lake Michigan during the heart of winter, much to their astonishment. The duo participated in a string of robberies during the 1950s, targeting banks and other businesses after closing time in order to avoid any people getting injured. John and Clarence were taken into custody in 1956 and were handed lengthy sentences, served at 3 different establishments. They both tried to escape from Atlanta Penitentiary numerous times but were never successful. The Anglin brothers were subsequently transported to Alcatraz Island. John in October 1960, and Clarence in January 1961. John Anglin was inmate AZ1476. Clarence Anglin was inmate AZ1485. The final member of the group was Alan Clayton West, who was born on the 25th of March 1929 in New York City. In the mid-1950s, he was convicted of car theft and was sent to Atlanta State Penitentiary, where he supposedly first met Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. He was moved to Florida State Prison and failed in an escape attempt. Unlike Frank Morris, he was noted as being of little intelligence. At 31 years old, he was thought to have the mindset of a young teenager. After his botched prison break, he was then transferred to Alcatraz in 1957. Alan West was inmate AZ1335. Whilst imprisoned at Alcatraz, Frank Morris became friendly with another prisoner, Clarence Carnes, who had previously been involved in the infamous Battle of Alcatraz in 1946. Carnes told Morris information regarding an access tunnel which lay beneath their cells, and Frank was inspired to develop an escape plan. Frank was at the helm of the operation, and after searching with Alan West, discovered ventilation shafts which allowed access to the roof of the prison. West also noted that the concrete of the building had suffered somewhat due to the sea spray. Over the course of many months, the men worked tirelessly during the night. Using discarded saw blades from the prison grounds, spoons from the facility's commissary, and an improvised drill from the motor of a broken vacuum cleaner, they picked away at their cell walls. The men concealed their work with cardboard and paint, and Frank Morris played his accordion to hide the noise they created. To avoid being detected, the men sculpted dummy heads from a mixture of toothpaste, soap, concrete dust, and toilet paper. To make them appear more realistic, they sculpted the faces, colouring them with paint from the maintenance shop, and used hair from the floor of the barber shop. Using their own clothes and towels beneath the sheets and placing the dummy heads on the pillows, it would appear to the prison guards that the men were indeed sleeping in their beds. Once Morris, the Anglins, and West dug through their cell walls, they discovered an unguarded corridor located behind the cell tier. Through this, they could access the roof of their cell block within the building, and the men made the space into a workshop. Having gathered several resources, both stolen and donated from fellow inmates, they managed to create life jackets based on a design they'd seen in the magazine Popular Mechanics. Also, they produced a 6 feet by 14 feet makeshift rubber raft, crafted with over 50 raincoats, the seams stitched together and sealed with heat by using nearby steam pipes. With scrap pieces of wood and stolen screws, they made paddles and used a stolen concertina to improvise as bellows in order to inflate their raft. They were apparently inspired by a copy of Sports Illustrated from the prison library, where the issue described how to enjoy water sports for very little cost. The men climbed up another ventilation shaft which led to a sizable fan and grill on the roof, where they severed the rivets which held both pieces in place. On the night of the 11th of June 1962, the quartet attempted to be the first prisoners to successfully escape from their incarceration on Alcatraz Island. Unfortunately for Alan West, his escape was thwarted. Concrete surrounding the opening of the ventilation grill had been crumbling, and West had used more concrete to fix this. However, at the crucial moment, the concrete had hardened and the hole he had made had shrunk considerably. Talking with the others out in the corridor, West recalled that one of the Anglin brothers said that the escape was an all-or-none deal, whereas Frank and the other Anglin argued that with Alan's problems, their chances for freedom would be foiled. Despite his best efforts, having eventually removed the grill and widened the hole once more, by the time he reached the roof, the trio had already vanished. He would return to his cell after dawn. Alan West left Alcatraz in 1963 and throughout his life served 20 prison sentences. In January 1969, Allen was sent to Florida State Prison. On the 30th of October 1972, he fatally stabbed a prisoner in an allegedly racially motivated attack. Allen West suffered from severe abdominal pains in winter 1978 and passed away on the 21st of December from acute peritonitis, aged 49. Frank Morris, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin crawled through the holes in their cells, making their way through the utility corridor and climbing up the ventilation shaft towards the roof. When they broke out of the shaft, guards within the prison actually heard what was described as a loud crash. However, the source of the unexpected noise was never investigated any further. The trio, along with their makeshift equipment, slid down a kitchen vent pipe, descending 50 feet to the ground, and then managed to climb up two 12-feet barbed wire perimeter fences. Having carefully planned in advance, the men fled towards the northeast shoreline, close to a power plant, which was actually a blind spot in the prison's system of searchlights and gun towers, where they used the concertina to inflate the raft. Investigators concluded that it was some time after 10 p.m. when Morris and the Anglins departed from the rock, heading towards Angel Island, which lay 2 miles north of the island, murky fog lingering in the night air. Their escape went unnoticed until the morning of the 12th of June 1962, the dummy heads having served their purpose. Over the following 10 days, there was an extensive search of the land, air and sea, carried out by both law enforcement and the military. Some evidence was uncovered, including a deflated life jacket 50 yards from Alcatraz, the remains of the raft which washed up on the beach, and a single paddle floating approximately 200 yards south of Angel Island. A personal packet was also recovered, containing photographs, names and addresses of Anglin relatives and friends. A paddle was reportedly found on Angel Island, leaning against a rock, suggesting that they may have made it. No bodies were ever recovered from San Francisco Bay, and there was no evidence to suggest that the men had drowned, yet authorities concluded that it was likely that this was their fate. The FBI believed it would have been impossible for Frank, John and Clarence to have successfully swam to Angel Island, considering the strong currents of the bay and the freezing temperatures, and it's also disputed that the men were even intending on swimming to Angel Island, perhaps using it as a misdirection to aid in their escape. Allen West exchanged his story under the premise that he would not be prosecuted for his part in the escape. He told his story and said that they had planned on stealing clothes and a car once they had reached shore. However, no claims were ever made to authorities regarding a situation like this. However, a television program later claimed a car had actually been stolen by 3 men in the area at the time. The FBI closed their file on the case in 1979 after a 17-year investigation. They officially concluded that the men drowned whilst attempting to swim to Angel Island. A month after the escape, a Norwegian freighter reported a body wearing clothes similar to that of an Alcatraz inmate floating in the ocean, 15 nautical miles from the Golden Gate Bridge. In 2014, researchers suggested that there was a small window soon after midnight where the state of the tide and the currents would have worked in the trio's favour and possibly made it to shore. Many swimmers have attempted the alleged route the men swam, and have done so successfully. The story, however, does not end there. Over the decades, there has been more evidence to suggest that the 3 men survived their escape. Apparently, soon after fleeing the island, a person claiming to be John Anglin called an attorney, and this was even before the escape was made public news. Clarence Carnes, who had given Frank Morris the initial idea to escape, received a postcard which read "Gone Fishing," which was apparently their code word to signal that they were successful in their escape. Various other claims and sightings were made in the years following, and despite the wide belief that all the fugitives perished in San Francisco Bay, they remain until their 100th birthdays on the FBI's wanted list. Relatives of Morris and the Anglins have produced evidence that they did survive. Bud Morris, an elderly man who claimed to be, in 2011, Frank Morris's cousin, said that he had on occasion delivered bribes to guards working at Alcatraz, and also claimed to have met up with Frank in a park in San Diego, his daughter backing up his story, recalling meeting her father's friend, Frank. It has never been confirmed if Bud's story is authentic. In 2012, on the 50th anniversary of their disappearance, two sisters of the Anglin brothers, along with their nephews, said that they had received both phone calls and Christmas cards from John and Clarence. The handwriting was analysed and it was concluded that the greeting cards had been written by the brothers, but authorities were unable to confirm when the cards were delivered due to the lack of stamps on the envelopes. John and Clarence's mother had also apparently received a Mother's Day card, merely stating, "Love the two." It was reported two mysterious men also attended the funeral of an Anglin relative, and some debate that they could have been the brothers. A friend of John and Clarence claimed he'd met up with them in Brazil in 1975 and had actually taken a photograph of them, living on a farm in Rio de Janeiro. Following analysis by forensic experts, it was concluded that the men in the picture not only resembled the men, but were, most likely, Clarence and John Anglin. Robert Anglin, one of their brothers, stated shortly before his passing that he had been in contact with them until about 1987. In January 2018, the FBI released more information regarding the case. The San Francisco Police Department had received a letter in 2013, allegedly from John Anglin himself. Segments of the letter read as follows. "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." It added, "If you announce on TV that, I will be promised to first go to jail for no more than a year and get medical attention. I will write back to let you know exactly where I am. This is no joke." The letter stated that Frank Morris passed away in 2008 and Clarence in 2011. The letter was tested for handwriting, DNA and fingerprints, however the results were inconclusive. There are many fascinating theories regarding the fate of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Their infamous escape from Alcatraz has become the most researched, discussed, and complex successes in American criminal history. Many believe that the most likely outcome is that the trio drowned and were washed out into the Pacific Ocean. However, there are those among us who love extraordinary true stories, and if the men did indeed survive, it would be a triumph for the ages. What ultimately became of Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin is unknown, yet the mystery surrounding their break for freedom and what happened that night and beyond keeps interest alive.